right, hello everyone. Welcome to another wonderful edition here of Level Up Mental Health. My name is Swizz, here ready to provide some awesome topics here. The first one we're going to cover is self-compassion. I personally like this one. There's a lot to kind of go through, especially being able to kind of break down what self-compassion is and the differences between what we often feel we utilize here, self-esteem, as kind of the main aspect related towards ourselves and how we view ourselves, right? So I always like to introduce and provide the context of what this term is, because a lot of the time in our lives we mainly just utilize the term of self-esteem in a way, when what we should be looking at is self-compassion, and that's what we'll explore here tonight. So let's dive into that worksheet here, and here we are, of self-compassion. So what is self-compassion? Well, to break it down, usually there's a little Venn diagram here to kind of show what's included with it. The three main things that are related to self-compassion include self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness. These three elements all kind of make up the core of it. So we'll take a look at what each of these are, and see again kind of how they relate to that. So the first one here is self-kindness. So being able to counter the automatic negative thoughts about ourselves, and when we make a mistake, being able to provide that kindness to ourselves rather than harshly criticizing it, right? So this is probably one of, I mean, all of these here, as we kind of go through it, you'll see how they are all fairly difficult to practice here. But self kindness can be very hard to practice, especially if you are having, let's say, you kind of grow up in a household where there's just a lot of kind of negative particular responses towards you, or again, you're never doing something right, right? Um, Being able to provide that kindness towards yourself is always fairly hard, especially even if you're in a I can't talk, parentified household, where you often feel you have to give towards others, and when you look at yourself, you may think, "Oh, like I don't deserve that," right? That's where the issues of self kindness come in. But it's a very integral part to be able to provide that compassion towards ourselves. Next one here, common humanity. I love kind of emphasizing this one here, because a lot of the time we often feel that our difficulties that we experience, we magnetize it in a sense. We feel that, no one else can kind of experience what we've kind of gone through. And to your point, a lot of that is valid, but the counter is the fact that what you've experienced of sadness, anger, frustration, anxiety, whatever it is, all humans experience that, right? So that's the thing to kind of recognize too, in that we are all not perfect, right? We're not all humans. I know maybe one of these days we'll be overtaken by AI robots and stuff like that, but for currently right now, we're all human. We all make mistakes, and being able to recognize that is the biggest thing. So, again, it's being able to have that self compassion and kindness towards ourselves, and recognize, hey, you know what? I am human. I do make mistakes. I do fail at some points. And it's okay, because we can grow through these moments. And that's the biggest thing, the biggest kind of takeaway through that. Last one here is mindfulness. So again, a lot of this is kind of all related, but mindfulness relates to bringing the ability of that awareness to ourselves, right? The moment to moment experiences where we're able to bring those thoughts in the forefront. Excuse me. So it's pretty hard, again, to do this if you are in a household that doesn't allow it, right? It doesn't allow to be able to acknowledge the pain, or recognize if we are able to kind of learn and grow through it, if we were often scolded by our actions. Doing things like this, being mindful about it, it can be hard to come by, right? But these three parts have all seen to really reflect into how to be compassionate towards yourself here. Um, so, what is some common misconceptions? One of the ones that always kind of comes into the picture here relates to feeling that, oh, if you're providing self-compassion, you're just throwing kind of a pity party for yourself, and that's not the case, right? Ultimately, what we're trying to remind ourselves here is that, you know, we may be going through a difficult time at this moment here, but we also have to recognize that there are other individuals here that may be experiencing areas that may not be as bad, may be the same as bad, or maybe even worse than what we're kind of going on. So knowing that life is hard for everyone here is the true aspect, right? Self compassion is for wimps. I must be tough and strong to get through life. So this one for sure I've heard a lot with the male clients I work with, understandably, right? So if you feel that you are thinking about yourself and kind of getting in touch with yourself, being scolded that way as a man, it may be hard to really practice it in that sense. But again, what's important to understand is being able to practice this helps build that inner strength. And honestly, again, it's stronger for that ability to have that inner strength, and our resiliency that is going to be growing through that rather than the avoidance that we may encounter. Being self compassionate is selfish. I need to focus more on others, not myself. This is a big one, too. Again, kind of related to what we were saying about the kindness to ourselves and where it may come from. I always like to use the metaphor of a kind of an equilibrium balance beam. I forget what they're called, but it's the scale, essentially, kind of the scale where you have the two there. And ultimately, the goal that we're trying to do is we want to balance our ability to be selfish and our ability to be selfless. A lot of times, being selfish gets a negative connotation to it. When the reality is that we also need to take care of ourselves in order to help other people. Now, the reason why I like to say it's a scale is because, again, if you put one more into one than the other, then it's going to have kind of the counter consequences that we may not want, right? So, for example, if you put, let's say that this is selfish and this is selfless. Let's say you put all your eggs into the selfish scale here, and as you can see, your ability to give towards others is not met. So because we're putting too much time invest into ourselves, so we have to counter that with being able to take care of ourselves, right? Or I'm sorry, take care of others. So if we keep giving and giving and giving and giving and giving, it's at the expense of ourselves over here, right? So we just have to have that balance every single day to ensure that we feel we're meeting those needs, right? And again, this is easier said than done because a lot of the time when we're trying to make these decisions, it can be hard to do that, right? Like, do I need to be selfish here or do I need to be selfless? And I think what's important to emphasize is that no matter whatever decision is made, you are making that decision based on the information that is presently available to you. And you can only, that decision that you make, you can only have as much resources available to, at the end of the day, make a choice. And you may look back and say, oh, maybe I should have chose the other way. But the reminder for yourself, that's where that self-compassion comes in, because we recognize that if we make a mistake, let's say if we make the choice that didn't pan out the way that we wanted to, it's okay because we're human and we make these mistakes and it's understandable. Next one here. If I'm compassionate to myself, I'll let myself get away with murder. I need to be hard on myself when I mess up to make sure I hurt other people. So again, we were kind of saying this earlier too, where if you feel you are hard on yourself, it's hard to really just kind of recognize that you're kind of the connotation here of getting away with murder, right? You're not doing justice to the work that you're doing. Ultimately, what we're trying to do again is with self-compassion, we're providing the opportunity to safely assess our choices and admit to our mistakes without blaming others, right? So the more that we're able to take that personal responsibility, the more likely we are able to be reflective and especially apologize to see if there's anyone that we've hurt. And last one here, I will never get to where I want to be in life if I let up on my hard self-criticisms. It drives me to succeed. Again, this is kind of a most common misconception that it has. But self-criticism also works to undermine our abilities and breeds a greater fear of failure, which makes sense, right? Because when you think about the drive of saying that like, oh, I can't be critical of myself, or I need to be kind of critical of myself. That's how I get my drive. There's always that underlying fear associated with it, and that fear can lead to kind of a really bad. Let's say if there is a particular failure that happens, it can really be intense, that particular response. So obviously we want to acknowledge our shortcomings and learn from them without beating ourselves up. Now, the last kind of distinction between the two, and I always like to break these down, is self esteem and self compassion. So, the difference between the two, self esteem relates to our positive self worth of who we are, right? Where a lot of it may be outwardly appearing. It may feel that I like kind of the comments here about being a fair weather friend, contingent on physical attributes and external success. Um, Being there when we succeed, but not when we're found to make a mistake. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to replace it with that self compassion, where we know that there isn't any judgment or evaluation. It's a way of accepting with the sense of, what the outcome is and who we are, being able to acknowledge that we are all imperfect, know that the source is a support that's always there for us, and it's less contingent on external factors and provides more of a stable sense of self-worth over time. So, like I said, excuse me, there is the very big distinction between the two, and it can be hard. It can be very hard to practice self-compassion here. But the more that you do it, the more that you're able to recognize your shortcomings and recognize the successes that you have, the better you'll be to kind of counter those negative thoughts that may occur. Okay? So, solid topic here. Hopefully you enjoyed it. As always, if you're watching this on YouTube, like and subscribe. Otherwise, I'll catch you in the next video. See ya.